So let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, tests. So why do standardized tests matter?
Yeah, I know everyone's eager to hear about standardized tests, GMAT or GRE. They matter. They can help inform your academic profile and our sense of your academic preparation for the program. They work with your undergraduate record and your work experience to give us a sense of how well you might do in the classroom. And they're very used for kind of a limited purpose. They've only been validated against midpoint GPA, so the first year, the core year of your MBA studies. The few things I would say about standardized tests is they don't have any fixed weight. So this is part of holistic review. We look at your standardized tests, your GMAT or GRE score in combination with your academic record, your work experience in a kind of fluid way to get a sense of your academic preparation, your academic potential. And the same score can mean different things depending on the rest of your profile. So depending if it can help, if you have a more modest undergraduate record, doing well in the score can help kind of elevate that. Or if you did really well in undergrad, we might lean less heavily on the score because we have evidence of your academic potential from some other source. But they do in general, obviously as the name suggests, being standardized, they help us kind of compare candidates across a range of backgrounds, academic disciplines, geographies. So they do help us get a kind of a sense of candidates sort of across the entire pool.
So what if you are happy with your overall score, but not so much one of the sub-scores?
Yeah, that's not infrequent. You might have, a really, a very strong overall sort of number, but maybe a little bit of unevenness underneath that. So I think it's probably most common for applicants to take the test more than once. You don't have to. If you're fine with the score the first time, don't take it again. You don't have to put yourself through that. But if if there are aspects of your performance that you feel you could improve on, you can take it again. And we will look at your highest overall score, but we will look at how well you did in the sub-scores to get a sense of your overall profile. So we will credit those sub-scores even if we're only looking at the highest overall score. So there can be benefits to maybe sharing all of those testing administrations with us.
So you can take the test multiple times if you want. Is there such a thing as too many times?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have people who take the tests quite a few times. And I would say as you're thinking about your MBA application, think about where your time and energy is best spent. Obviously, you want to do well on the standardized tests. And you want to think about how well your score represents your potential and where you think you should be. And obviously, if there's room to improve and you think you can do that, obviously it makes sense to retake the test. But there is a point of diminishing return. And I think usually we see people, it's not uncommon to see someone, candidates take the test more than once, but usually after 2 or 3 administrations, depending on what the trajectory looks like, you might see diminishing returns and might be better to devote your energies elsewhere. One thing I would add too is that obviously we publish our average test scores, the GMAT, GRE. We publish our mid 80% range. Just know those aren't one size fits all numbers. Where your score and what your score means in the context of your specific application, your specific profile can mean something very different. So don't base your potential, your competitiveness on just a kind of reductive number that represents an average.
That makes sense. And I think even probably the number of times is a very case-by-case basis. You may have taken it years apart and are in a different place than when you first studied for it, or you may just know that you need another couple of sittings to get to where you want. But I think that's good advice to think about, the diminishing returns and where you're focusing your energy.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I think it depends on, if you've taken it 3 times and it's kind of all 3 administrations are roughly the same, maybe that's a sign that that's kind of the score you're likely to get. But if you're jumping 30 or 40 points each time, maybe there's more room to kind of increase. So it is, as you say, dependent on your individual circumstances.